A few days ago, while we were staying in Ollantaytambo, we took a day trip up to a village called Paracancha, which is a weaving village, a woman's weaving co-op that is based high in the mountains above Ollantaytambo. It's a dirt road up there, very narrow track. Last year we took the same track, but it was washed out, and we weren't able to get up as high as we did this time. A couple of really scary moments last year on the drive up there just because the road was so bad. But this year was better. We got up above Paracancha and we got out of the van, and you could see across this unbelievable valley with a river running through the middle of it. You could see local people traversing these trails along the hillside, just seemingly miles away because of the scale of this valley. Every breath you took was a struggle because of the altitude. Don't go chasing waterfalls, people. I got text messages coming in. I don't know about you. I don't like texting. Texting is like, whoosh, explodes. My brain never feels good, never feels right, feels kind of soulless. And yet we do it all day long. I brought props for today's show and tell. We are sticking with the theme of Peru on this episode of Notes on Photography. I am one person with one opinion. You may love this image. You may hate this image. It doesn't really matter. I'm just breaking it down. These are pictures that I've made in the past that I think have, at least to some degree, a bit of success involved in the photograph. They were something that when I saw the negatives, I said, that's actually what I wanted, and I'm going to include that. The last Notes on Photography was a pretty extensive breakdown of an image shot from the Amazon, and I had all kinds of little films and sounds and everything else, and it really got me thinking. Actually doing that episode of Notes on Photography and doing this episode of Notes on Photography actually got me thinking for the first time in a long time how much I want to get back in the field and actually do a project at some sort. And Latin America is calling and calling and calling, and I cannot get it out of my head. I would love to go back to Peru. I would go back to Uruguay. I would go back to Guatemala, Panama, any of those places to do this. Today's image, as I mentioned, is another image from Peru. But before I get to the image, I want to talk about something else, because I stumbled across, yesterday I had to make a film for Blurb, and I ended up using this as a prop. And it got me thinking, I wonder what other books on Peru I've printed. Now, if you've ever listened to me talk about Blurb or about self-publishing in general, one of the things that you'll hear me talk about all the time is the fact that if you are going to be a book maker, a zine maker, a magazine maker, you have got to make test books. You have to make test books on a regular basis. Nothing in the creative world happens on the first go. Everything is through revision, and bookmaking is no different. So everything that you see here, all four of these, and these are only a few of the publications that I made with the work from Peru. And every other country I've been to in Latin America, I probably have as many or more test books from that work. This is actually a huge part of the fun for me when I come back. I actually start compiling these things in my head, sometimes when I'm in the field, which I don't recommend. I actually think that's a bad idea, to spend too much time in the field laying things out in your head, because to make the best photography you can, you really can't be doing anything else. You can't be doing social, you can't be doing YouTube, you can't be communicating with your family, you can't be communicating with your friends, you can't be watching TV, you can't be laying out books in your head. You have to just do the photography. So the first one is a book called Chamba, and Chamba is a spine on top book, my friends. I have seen this work well in the past, so instead of having the book like this, you turn it on its head, and you actually flip through this way. Ooh, so hot. This doesn't work particularly well, in my opinion. There are aspects of this book I really like. The images inside, some of them anyway, I really like. And I'll do some top downs of all these so that you can see. But like an image like this, which as a standalone vertical 35 black and white image, I really like. It's probably one of the signature images from the entire time that I've been in Latin America. It's 4 monks on the way to a church in Cuzco, Peru in the rain with umbrellas. You can't see their heads. It still doesn't look great laid out like this. It's just an awkward kind of crop. But this is a 6x9 trade book, very inexpensive, very fun to put together, probably 60 some pages, probably 40 images, black and white images. I'll show you more in the top down. Let It Come Down is a reference to Paul Bowles, one of my favorite authors, a tribute to him. He wrote a lot about North Africa. He was also a composer, one of my favorite authors, and this is just a journal. This is a dot background page journal, which I've yet to start working in. Anyway, hardcover, trade book, nothing fancy. This baby, on the other hand, this is a 440-page, 8x10 trade book, all about square photographs from Latin America, and there are a lot of them in here. I just did this as a sample for no other reason than I had never seen a 440-page 8x10. I also used a version of the paper that's available. I used the economy version to see if it would actually hold up with the images. The short answer is yes, it actually held up image-wise far better than I thought it was. What I don't like about the economy paper is in the areas where you don't have an image, you just have a continuous tone, you get quite a bit of banding. Now, does that really bother me that much? No, I would actually probably try to design something to actually take a benefit from the banding. But surprisingly, this looked better than I thought it was. Now, better than I thought it would. This is several years old, so I have a feeling the printing would actually be quite a bit better now if I was to rebuild that again. And this Dog with Fleas, this is a terrible book, a terrible test book that I did. First of all, this was a rush job, never a good sign when you're making books. And this is a lay flat book, and I threw it together pretty quickly. Whoa, this thing weighs a ton. It's probably $10,000. No, this is probably like now, if I built this book now, it's probably a $300+ book. If I was going to do that again, I would definitely spend a lot more time on the design, and I would spend a lot more time actually putting this together and really trying to be, smart about it. How about Peruvian photographers? Yeah, how about those guys? This is a beast of a book. I do like the lay flat if I was doing a portfolio. And if I was sending that out to clients trying to get jobs, or if I had a specific person in Peru that I was trying to get access from or wanted to work with, I would consider sending that, because $300 for a portfolio is really nothing compared to what we used to spend in the past. Okay, so the image that we are going to talk about today, the backstory is, there is no huge backstory. This was in the middle of, I don't know what trip it was to Peru, but we had come out of a pretty high mountain village and had been working in this mountain village for a while. We left that town and we stumbled across a small festival in a little town in the mountains, which turned out to be photographically just off the charts. It was absolutely fantastic. I probably made 6 or 8 images from that little village that ended up in the final take from Peru. The image that we're gonna look at came just shortly thereafter, where we ended up we were staying in a small hotel in a small town. I guess you could call it a hotel. And there was a hot spring nearby, but not like the classic hot spring that you would think about here, where it's either a high-end resort where you feel like everyone's watching you, or some backcountry thing that you hike into the hills and there's like a natural pool coming out of the side of a mountain. This was somewhere in between, Peruvian style. So there were kind of indoor and outdoor pools that you could get in that were like hot springs, but look at the flavor inside this photo in terms of the texture of the walls and the buildings and the mountains going up right from behind. This was fantastic. So I'm getting ready to get in this pool, and I've always got my trusty camera with me. Looks like this, by the way, when I'm using it. And I'm left eye dominant, so I have to hold it like this, and then I have to take my head away every time I hit the shutter. I got my trusty camera, and I'm getting in this hot spring, and I turn around and there's a mirror on the wall. And I turn, and with this lens, or maybe it was a 35, I don't know, I shoot into the mirror. And I get this line of people sitting in the pool. Not a single one is looking at me, which is fantastic, because if you look at this picture, there are no tourists in this picture at all. These are all local folks, and I stick out like a sore thumb. And I shoot this picture, and I go, in my head, I know I'm gonna like that. I know I'm gonna want it. But here's where this gets interesting. Is in the process of pulling this file, I noticed that I had shot a single picture before this picture, and I had shot it in the opposite direction. So I shot one in one direction, one in the other, because there were 2 mirrors. And I'm not entirely sure now which one of these images I like more, because I saw the other one and there are some redeeming qualities on that. So I think I'm gonna share both of these, and you can tell me if there's which one jumps out at you or not. So let's have a look and do the breakdown. Alrighty then, let's have a little breakdown of some of these books. Yes, this is the camera that I was using in Peru. It's pretty basic. It is a brass light-tight box with a lens on the front. Go figure. Still, after all these years, my favorite camera. All right, this was the Spine on Top book, Chamba. I do like this cover image, actually. It's from, we were offshore, off of Lima. But as you can see, this is a spine on top, meaning the spine is on top. What do you think it means? Okay, there we go. Like, this is one of the pictures from the Amazon that I love. Yeah, and you're kind of cruising along and you're like, wow, this MILNOR guy, he's just an amazing photographer. I want to be him. Not really. Okay. But then you're like, well, okay, that worked. Yeah, here's where we're getting to where this just doesn't work for me. So let's go back. You're like, oh, I love that picture. That's a music video being made. These are kind of nice, you know, 2 images, top and bottom. I don't mind this at all. I think that that works. There's a little triptych I did in the middle of nowhere. Again, this is a Indian family at Machu Picchu. I don't really like this at all. That's not working for me. And there's one in here that's, let me find it. Oop, that's the one image I showed. 9. This one actually almost works, but still not great. Anyway, that's Chamba, very inexpensive trade book. Now we're talking Let It Come Down, journal. So I actually took the essay covers just for fun. And again, test book people, all I'm doing is testing. Love these dot pattern pages. Using the shapes tool just for fun. Single image. This is really just about writing. And again, I'd never done a journal in hardcover like this, but I actually kind of like it. I would add more pages so the actual object itself is thicker, but that's just me. Here is the giant, colossal monstrosity that is Latin America. Boom, 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 boom. I guess I should do it this way. It's easier to see. There's Peru, there's Uruguay, there's Panama, there's all kinds of stuff in here. Anyway, not too bad. This is what I was talking about when you see there's a little bit of banding. You can see it there. Not a deal breaker for me because I think the photos actually hold up fairly well for an economy paper. I think this was like $30 for a 440 page monster, if you're considering. Now this dog with fleas, I don't recommend at all. Let me see if I can find something interesting here to show. You know, I do like the lay flat aspects of this. I think the color prints incredibly well. This is 6.6 Kodak Portra through a Hasselblad. Good color, film prints unbelievably well. You have to do very little to it to get it to reproduce like this in any kind of print-on-demand publication. You know, pretty basic color, basic black and white. That's kind of a nice frame, nice little moment happening there. Got a repeat here. I did this as an experiment to see what a double truck would look like using the same image twice versus one image off 2 pages. Again, I told you I am constantly tinkering and making tests. And if you're not, you're missing out, my friends. You should be doing it. It's actually quite fun. All right, friends and family, let's break down this image that I've been teasing you, tantalizing you with here, and here it is in all its glory. Let me just shrink it down just to, well, that was rude. That was just plain rude. Photoshop being rude. So I used to do this on my iPad Pro, but it doesn't work anymore. So I'm relegated to the laptop and with Photoshop. But this is the image I made at this hot spring. Now, a couple things about this I like. Things that I think are working and a few things that aren't working. Number one, you've got a big, bright, open shade light source that's coming down like this, which is pretty nice because that means that light is hitting this water and reflecting back up into the faces of the people in this frame. And if I zoom in here and I go even tighter, you can see, look at the light on these faces. That is really nice reflective light. That gives crisp definition to each one of these faces. Another thing I really like is that there is no one in this image looking at me. And I am no more than 20 feet away from these people. I am the only person who looks like me, sounds like me, acts like me in this arena, and yet for some reason, no one is looking at me. It's like I'm invisible. I also like the fact that I've got this nice little diagonal line here. This is basically a two-dimensional image. You've got one plane here, which is the wall, which is what this mirror is hanging on. I'm turned around from the crowd and I'm shooting into the mirror. That is probably one of the reasons why no one's looking at me, because they don't know I'm making this picture. And the second plane is what I would call a midground here, which is reflected in the mirror. And then the third would be the background up here, which is actually kind of busy and not really that interesting. This whole part of the frame up here is just kind of, meh. I mean, conceivably, I could come in here and I could crop something out of this. That might still work, but I don't know. I still like it kind of loose. I don't know. I look at that shot loose, and it has more applications for me than if it was shot super tight. But I love the diagonal of people here. I think that's a nice touch. You've got this shape here, here, and here reflected back in here. You've also got it up here. So you've got that same set of dynamic elements 3 times, which is kind of cool. Very, very simple photograph. But here's where we get interesting. This is where I derailed myself. I look at this picture yesterday, and I'm thinking, what's everybody looking at? If they're not looking at me, all these heads are looking in this direction. What could possibly be in that direction? And I realized I made 2 frames of this little encounter, this being the other. So here's the other end of the pool. Now, I'm not sure which one of these I like better. This is the one I've printed, the one I edited, the one I jumped at initially, but now I'm looking at this one, and there's some redeeming qualities here. I still think potentially this one is slightly better, but this has a couple of things I like even more. One, let me zoom in here. The light on this kid's face right here, that is really nice. He's the anchor of that picture to me. There's a clarity in his face. Nice crisp definition of here on these 2 kids. I like that. I like the position of her legs and the fact that she's moving and it's a motion. I love this sort of old aspect of what's happening here on the wall. There's someone here in the pool. This would be me. I'd be like holding my breath or playing Marco Polo by myself. Whoever's doing that, that's kind of a nice addition. And I also like the fact that there's more wall here to work with. You get a sense of the texture of the wall, and it becomes more pronounced that this is either a hole in the wall that's offering this perspective, but it's more obvious that this is a mirror reflecting back. So I don't know. I go back and forth. I don't know. One is better than the other. That's the thing. When you're bookmaking, most of the time, it's one or the other. You can't do both. You got to put the screws to it. Got to make tough decisions. You got to take some of your children and leave them at the bus stop, never to be seen again. You know, that's the kind of, that's really, and I'm not joking about this, but when you're editing photo books, you really have to make tough decisions. I don't think I would ever include 2 of these in the same book, but I would have to make a decision as to which one I like the most. And again, maybe it's a slight crop on this one to go in. Don't know. I'm sticking with this for now, but that is my take on this image, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you get a chance to go to Peru, I think you should go to Peru. Since yesterday, I have been scheming and scamming in my head about how to go back and teach another workshop in Peru. Because, wow, like I said, for the first time in a long, long time, I feel like getting out into the field. And Notes on Photography 9, which was the one about the Amazon image that was mixing the little bits of motion and sound and stills, I haven't done that in years. And I'm getting a hankering, people. That's a good word if you're not from the US and you haven't been to the South. That is a word that we use that's kind of perfect. Hankering. Got a hankering for something, which means you like it. Let me translate for you. So I hope you enjoyed that Notes on Photography. I've got another one lined up from here in New Mexico that I'm going to be working on next. It's a picture that reminds me of the movie Sicario, even though it has nothing to do with the drug war. But it's about location, place, light, and feel. And it makes me feel like the border. We'll get to that next. Thanks for tuning in.